David Greaves is a biologist with the Environmental Protection Agency and a nature photographer. He was born in Washington, D.C., and grew up in Clinton, Maryland, where his love for the environment and wildlife was fostered. David's photography inspired by the television shows he grew up watching, such as PBS Nature, documentaries, Wild America, Discovery Channel, and reading animal encyclopedias at an early age. His work encourages the viewer to look around and explore the diversity of nature that can be found in their backyards or discovering nature all while traveling abroad. There's a story behind each of his images, and each of his images evokes emotion in the viewer. He uses his photography to encourage Black people and other people of color of all ages to explore the natural world around them. He created the brand and the company as a way to introduce the Black people to nature that he's surrounded by. So, David, please go ahead and introduce yourself. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing very well. So I'm going to review myself. And while I get some things prepared, can you please tell me first, what is your spark bird? Two, when did you start
Okay.
birding? Two, when did you start birding? And three, why is Black Birders Week important?
Okay. Uh, so my spark bird, I would probably say would be the pileated woodpecker. I saw this bird when I was a child. We used to hang up our clothes in the backyard on some wooden clotheslines, and one afternoon I was looking out the window, saw this humongous woodpecker pecking away on our clothing line, and also reminded me of Woody Woodpecker, which was one of my favorite characters back in the day. So I would say that's my spark bird and a bird I've chased as an adult as well. Um, oh gosh, what was the second question? Um,
When did
oh,
you start birding?
oh, I think it's something that I've done all of my life before I knew that birding was a thing. Just being outside and enjoying nature, birds was something that I always was interested in. But as an adult, I would probably say around 2015, 2016. And I think third question, you said, what does Black Birders Week mean to me?
Yep.
Okay. What Black Birders Week means to me, I think it means connectivity. It means unity. I think when I started, you know, putting myself out there with my photography, um, I thought I was the only one out here doing this as a Black nature photographer. And when Black Birders Week came along, I saw that I wasn't alone. I saw there was a number of us out here across the country and around the world that was into birding and nature photography. So it always gave me a sense of unity and belonging. So I think that's what Black Birders Week means to me.
Thank you, David. And
Mhm.
now, David, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit more technical
Okay.
difficulties. But on that note, David, I just spoke with you just the other evening, and I know that you can talk. Um,
Yeah,
so so rap with me a little bit.
sure.
I pull this up. Can we see this?
Yep, I can see it.
Never mind. We don't have to rap. Matter of fact, why don't you tell me to hush? And David, why don't you get thank you so much. So, and without any further ado, um, nature photography with Mr. David Greaves.
All right, you can go to the next slide. So thank you everyone for having me. Thanks to Dara for did I say your name right? Is Dara? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody during first day of Black Birders Week. So as was mentioned in my bio, I was born in Washington D.C., raised in Prince George's County, Maryland, during the '80s and '90s. So you can imagine what that was like. No cell phones, no internet, no tablets, no social media. So basically, I spent a lot of time outside. Typical '80s kid being inside by the time the street lights come on, that type of thing. In my neighborhood, it was very diverse, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. It was a melting pot of the neighborhood. So it wasn't anything to see a bunch of brown and Black kids, white kids playing outside. One of the things a group of us loved to do was play in the woods. I tried to bring in any and every animal I could into the house, frogs, turtles, salamanders, bugs, anything to bring in the house. And I would drive my mom crazy. And I also probably had every pet you can think of besides cats. We weren't cat people. But that's the type of environment that I grew up in as I was coming up. And as Dara mentioned before, we would go to the library, any type of animal book, bird guide, amphibian guide, mammal guide, or whatever. I was reading to me because I had a love for nature and the environment, and anything on TV outside of cartoons. I was watching Wild America, Nova, and things like that. So nature has always been a love of mine growing up. Next slide. And it's also a part of my culture. So my family, both my parents are from the island of Barbados. So growing up as a child with my older siblings, we would visit my family in the islands every other summer. So my grandmother lived up in the countryside. On my dad's side, lived in the country. My mom's family lived on the coast. So I got a mixture of country wildlife and exploration, as well as going down to the beaches and with my uncles and snorkeling and catching fish and looking at crabs and seahorses and all those type of things. So it was very ingrained in my culture. Next slide. So at my grandmother's house, she had a farm. So I grew up running around with chickens and goats and things like that during the summers that I would go. And as an adult, once I got into photography and videography, I was able to go back to my homeland and film and photograph the different species of birds that were around my grandmother's property, just as well as kind of view my homeland in a different way from a naturalist and photography perspective. I just want to make a note. The house you see in that picture is my grandmother's house, and it's one of the last chattel houses in the island that's in good condition. So it's kind of a historical landmark on the island. And if you know about chattel houses, those are the houses that those folks who worked on sugar plantations lived in during those times because they were easy to move around from location to location. Next slide. So because of my love of animals and nature, I decided to major in biology with a focus on pre-veterinary medicine when I went to college at Lincoln University. However, by the time I got close to my senior year, I was like, I don't want to spend another 8 or 9 years in school collecting debt, trying to be a veterinarian, but I still wanted to do something that was animal related, or environmental related as well. So I took a lot of ecology classes and environmental science classes because I wanted to do something that still kind of had some type of interaction with animals and nature. Next slide. So upon graduating from Lincoln, I did a lot of research about federal agencies that kind of lined up with my kind of moral compass or had a mission that had something to do with the outdoors and nature and the environment. So I ended up starting a career at the Environmental Protection Agency, Region 3, which is in Philadelphia. And we serviced Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, and DC. Those are our areas of oversight. And I've done a lot of work in water protection, and I currently clean up hazardous sites and put them in reuse for animal habitats and parks and things like that. Excuse me. And during my career at the agency, I've done a lot of outdoor environmental outreach and education to schools in the Philadelphia area, primarily schools of color with Black and Hispanic serving schools. Next slide. So the reason we're here today, after getting past my background, is to talk about how I got into photography as a passion, as a business, and just as a tool for outreach. So probably right around 2015, 2016, I was going through like kind of a mid-career crisis at work. At that time, I was also trying to figure out this side hustle thing, doing event videography and wedding videography and things like that. And I was frustrated with both things, the job and also, dealing with people, with doing weddings and people not wanting to pay me what my work is worth, and just dealing with the whole editing process and dealing with people. And I was also, uh, to be frank, in a relationship that wasn't going too well. So I needed a mental health reset or a mental health break. So I kind of went back to my childhood and went to a place where um, I always found peace was in the outdoors. So I gathered up my tripod and my cameras, and I went to the John Hines Wildlife Refuge in Philadelphia, right outside the Philadelphia airport. Took my equipment out, started filming herons gliding through the aquatic vegetation, catching fish, eagles flying over, osprey, bumblebees doing their pollination thing, butterflies, and um, I felt a sense of peace come over me. And I said to myself, this is what I need to be doing. It's giving me peace. Um, I just a sense of catharsis. And I went home, I edited the footage, and whereas before, when I would edit wedding videos, it was drudgery. I hated it. It'd take me forever to do it. But I was kicking out little reels and nature trailers, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because I loved it. And it took me back to when I was a child. I wanted to be the guy behind the camera filming in Africa or filming in the forest, these nature documentaries that I used to watch. And that kind of took me back to a 360-degree thing in my mind where I'm doing something that I always wanted to do as a child. So that really was a good reset for me and really helped set me on this path of discovering this old but new passion that I had for wildlife photography and videography. Next slide. So around 2016, I started traveling up and down the East Coast, going to Maryland, going to places in Delaware, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, just exploring this new passion that I found, and I just started filming anything I could find at different parks. And a coworker of mine was a professional photographer. He said, "You know what? Why don't you try still photography?" And I kind of fought with him a little bit about it because I felt like, filming is where it's at. You get to see the animals in motion, what's better than that? And so he kept nagging me about it. So I finally picked up my DSLR. I said, this is all I'm going to take with me. I'm going to go to the woods and I'm going to shoot. And immediately I fell in love with the ease of it. I didn't have to carry on a bunch of gear and tripods. I can just go with the camera and immerse myself in the environment and take these photos of my subjects. And I just fell in love with the photography aspect of it. I mean, the videography skills are still there, and I use them from time to time. But I love still photography, and that's how this journey began. Just traveling around. And one of the things I noticed, however, when I was out in these spaces, was that I didn't see a lot of people that look like me. Sometimes not at all, and that began to really bother me. And I wanted to do something about it. You can go to the next slide. So as I'm traveling around and starting this photography process, my first thought was like, I want to go to Africa and take pictures of the lions and the wildebeest and things like that. But then I thought to myself, I just started this. I'm getting the feel for it. So why don't I start small? Let me go into the backyard and start taking photographs of what I found in the backyard. Let me go on Google Maps and see what the local wildlife refuges and parks are near me, and start there. So I was finding some amazing things in these local parks and wildlife refuges that I was around. And I said to myself, what do I call this? What do I call this concept of just finding nature where you are or wherever you are at any time in any place? And I was driving through, leaving Delaware to go visit my family in Maryland. I was driving through Baltimore and saw a red-shouldered hawk sitting on the street lamp. I was like, these animals are everywhere and they're right under our noses. And boom, nature under your nose just came to me. As soon as I got to my destination, I Googled it to make sure nobody had it. I created the logo, trademarked it, and did all this stuff to make sure that this was actually indeed mine, that no one had thought about it. So the goal of the brand and the company is to open people's eyes to everything that's around them, that's beautiful, that's natural. I feel like we spend a lot of time, can be in our phones or working, and not just taking some time to, no pun intended, stop and smell the roses and see what's around us. And lastly, I created this brand because I had a desire to um, connect or reconnect Black people and other people of color to nature. And the things that I've seen out when I'm out in the woods, like it has a healing component to it, and I know that there's a lot of things you can do. You can do therapy, you can do a lot of mental health things, but I feel like as a people, sometimes we don't avail ourselves to another component of that, which could be nature therapy, going out in the woods, getting on some water and kayak and hiking, just sitting in the park. All those type of things I think are something that is missing from our community in terms of tools that we can use for our mental health. Next slide. So eventually, as doing this photography thing, a young friend of mine told me that I needed to get on Instagram. I'm kind of old head, and initially I was resistant to getting on social media, but he let me know that this was the thing I had to do in order to get my work out there and to get exposure. And I really wanted to use social media as a tool because I wanted people to see this Black man out in the woods. He's seeing, he's photographing these amazing things. He's going somewhere that I could get to, and he looks like me, and he's getting back in the house safely after experiencing or exploring these different areas. And that's why I use Instagram as a tool to further help me to expose people to what's out there for them, and that people like them are doing it. Next slide. So as the my work and my brand began to grow, I began to get requests to come to schools, work with kids in the area in Delaware and Philadelphia. So I began to experiment with teaching photography classes. I began teaching classes at Girard College in Philadelphia to a group of high school kids that were in the photography club. The reason they brought me in was because I had a unique perspective on photography, and that I was a nature photographer and I wasn't doing street photography, models, or product photography. So they wanted to expose those kids to another avenue of photography that they never thought of while learning the technical aspects of photography. Um, I went to a lot of minority serving or schools of color. And initially, they were asking me to come in and talk about my job at EPA, but then that started to change more to be focused on the photography aspect because, I would go to these schools and I'd ask them, when you think about a nature photographer, do you think of someone that looks like me? And no one would ever raise their hand because they didn't see, not used to seeing a Black guy with a camera going out in the woods and taking photos of birds and things like that. So I use it as a tool to teach these kids that whatever your passion is, that you should follow it, no matter how weird somebody thinks it is, or your culture thinks it is, or your family thinks it is. If that's what you love to do, then you should do it, and that's what I've been using this my photography for. Next slide. So I've gone to a lot of elementary schools. A lot of college prep programs have been calling me to work with them, and now I just have this cool component to my outreach and I think because I work in an environmentally based organization, I kind of have this 360 degrees of happiness where I go to work, I work at cleaning up these hazardous sites and making sure they're clean for people to enjoy. And I get to play in the environments that I also get paid to protect. So that's also a message that I use for these students is that, find a career that kind of has this 360 degrees of, it goes along with your moral compass or what you love to do, but also can help feed your artistic side or whatever your passion is. And that's also what photography has brought to the table for me. And I try to spread that message to other kids as well and other students. Next slide. And because I had that message of, you know, using photography to teach people and students to follow their passions, there's a lot of opportunity that comes to you when you're in your flow and you're doing something that you love to do. One of my goals early on with my photography was to be able to travel abroad and take photos of wildlife across the world, and again, have this image of a black man traveling to Belize or wherever, photographing these animals, and kind of breaking that barrier where you only typically see, a white person doing those type of things. So I'm breaking that stereotype by going to these places and showing people, hey, like, yeah, I'm a photographer, but I'm a nature photographer. And because of my photography, I've been able to go to some cool places. I was invited to come to Belize to teach photography classes to the tour staff at this resort, as well as work with kids in the community that were interested in photography in this small town in Hopkins, Belize. And it was an amazing experience to me and like a dream come true because it's something that I wanted to do. And because I kept putting it out there and chasing it, um, it started to happen. Next slide. And one other opportunity that I'm very proud of is that, so at the EPA at my job, a friend of mine and I discussed, I wanted to start doing exhibits, and I didn't have any connections in any art galleries or anything like that. And he said, "Why don't we do something here at work?" And I spoke to some people, and they gave me the space. They said, "Do what you want. The room is yours." And we came up with this whole exhibit for me to display my work. And I was the first Black person in the agency to have an exhibit at a EPA office, and that was kind of a launching pad for me to get more exposure for my work. But also, I found there were a lot of people that people of color in my job that didn't know that I was into nature and photography, and that opened up some means of conversation for me and them, and to expose them to what I do and expose them to kind of like I was starting at home and exposing people to what I do and trying to get them outside as well. But then there was some other folks who I hadn't really had a connection with or spoke to before, that now this is our connective tissue. And I've grown in community at my job by exposing people to the photography that I do. And again, just following those passions, you just never know what type of opportunities you have to connect with people on different levels as well. Next. I was able to take the message of um, one being a Black nature photographer and following my passion, and encourage young people at a college age to do the same thing. I was teaching a photography class at a garden in Delaware, and I never know who's in my classes, but there was a couple people of color that took the class because they saw my photo in the brochure and said, I just took this class because I saw you in it. I never see any people of color in this brochure, and I saw you, so I wanted to take your class. And I didn't know that this person was the dean of faculty relations at Lincoln University. And she took the class, she loved the content, and I got a text message from her, and she asked me to speak at the honors convocation for the graduating class last year. So again, I just, following your passion and this nature photography thing is taking me places that I never thought I would be and having me do things that I never thought I would do. Next. So, um, oh wow, I'm sorry, a crow just flew past my window. Um, yeah, so I've learned now because of this photography that I love teaching. Um, I've been teaching photography classes at a garden, and like I mentioned before, in Hockessin, Delaware, for the last 2 years, and I've been able to meet a lot of great people, expose people who are not used to seeing people like me teaching these types of classes, but also bringing people of color who would never have gone to this particular space or outdoor space because they didn't feel comfortable. Because I'm there teaching these classes, more people have started to come out. as well. So I just want to make a note that any that we're in this space, and I think we're doing a lot more. We have a bigger influence that we may think we're having in these spaces by us doing what we're doing as Black birders and nature photographers. So I just wanted to make that point. Next. So some other cool things, as I've been doing the nature photography thing, I've people contact me for different opportunities to get folks outside. So a lot of people think I'm crazy for doing this, but last year I started, year before last, I bought a kayak in order to try to do some photography on the water. I know people think I'm crazy for doing it. They swear I'm going to drop my camera in the water. It's not happened in 2 years, and it will never happen because I will it not to. But I was taking a lot of shots by the water, and I would get on Instagram live on the water, and there became an interest where people would contact me and ask me about, one, is kayaking safe? Is it fun? Is it something I could do? And I was able to partner with a company out in Lancaster, PA, where she had an interest in bringing more people of color to the water, and I had an interest in doing the same thing. So through my photography and Instagram, we connected, and I've been able to work with her to do these kayaking trips where um, she brings the kayaks to the location where I'm at. I bring the people, and we go in the water, and we have a great time. And you'd be amazed how therapeutic it is, and how much people will reveal about themselves, or how it takes the load off of people's minds just being on the water and having turtles float by and eagles fly over your head, and just it's just an amazing thing. So it's just another aspect of what I'm doing to increase participation and representation in the outdoors. Just another aspect. We do it on land and water. We out here trying to make sure that our people are enjoying nature. Next. And I've been able to meet so many great people across the country that have kind of taken on the nature under your nose mindset, and these are landscape photographers, but they're getting into nature photography too. And I think that influence of what I'm bringing to the table as far as what I do, to see it go across the country is pretty dope. And I'm leading nature walks now, which is something that that I'm a extrovert introvert, so it's been interesting leading these nature walks because I'm not really a talker. But again, it's just something else that I've found rewarding to do. And again, I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for the nature photography that I started years ago. Next slide. So with all the opportunities and the fun things that I've been able to do because of this journey in nature photography, I just wanted to touch on this a little bit, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit afterwards during the discussion part. But there are some challenges to being a Black nature photographer, or just being a Black person in these outdoor spaces across the board. Um, and these three are not exhaustive. These are just three that I thought of off the top of my head. But there's trying to break those internal and external stereotypes. Internal stereotypes to me is, in a particular culture, I just use, my culture and my experience as a Black man. When you talk about going into the woods, there's fear associated with that. There's history associated with that. And then it's where you come from, or where you grew up. It's like, why are you going out into the woods? There's bugs, there's animals, you're gonna get snatched, all legitimate concerns. But I feel like there's ways to kind of get past that. And for me, sometimes it's challenging to try to, get people to get up and come outside. And on a Saturday morning when there's a host of other things they could be doing, but just give me one Saturday out. Just give me one Saturday to try. It's all, to me, it's all about exposure. Expose yourself to it. you don't like it, you never have to do it again. But a lot of times we don't even take that first step to try it, just because of those internal stereotypes. Or um, you have the external stereotypes where it's people that don't think we should be out there. So there's that going on, and then it's we don't think we should be out there, and it's trying to is and because we know that there's people that don't want us out there, we don't go either. So it's trying to kind of break through those barriers to get people to get outside and try it. And then the second point would be um, managing microaggressions in the outdoors, and managing, for me, how to respond to them depending on the level of the microaggression. Um, it's frustrating because sometimes you can't tell if somebody's being genuinely curious, or, for lack of a better term, they're being a jerk. I was out at a wildlife refuge a couple months ago, and I'm a very aware person. And I kept seeing this guy, white guy, appearing behind me everywhere I would go, kind of a ways off. So I went to stop to take a photo of some swans, and then I heard him come up behind me, and he stopped and pulled his binoculars out and was looking. I'm like, cool, he's not here to bother me. And all of a sudden, he asked me, did I have any questions about anything? And I'm like, why are you asking me that? He didn't have any official wildlife refuge shirt on, or not anything like that. He just So I'm like, why would you assume that I don't know, that I would have to ask you questions about anything out here, versus like, why would you assume that I don't know what I'm doing out here, essentially? And that was frustrating to me, because the assumptions that people have when they see people of color outside is that you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're looking at, and you need help. If I didn't ask you, I don't need help. So just those things can be frustrating. And again, overall, just addressing the fear of our community regarding outdoor spaces. Next slide. So, um, so I teach whole like entire classes on nature photography, and just basically getting people started with um, um, people buy these DSLRs. They have all these buttons on them and all these screens, and the manual is this thick. My goal with my photography classes is to get people to get off of auto mode, and try some of the other settings that will give you some control over your shot and control over your settings, but it's not full manual, because that could be a whole beast in itself. But I just want to get people to get started. So for me, photography tips, I'm a Canon person. First of all, I use Canon cameras. Started on Nikon, but ended up with Canon. And my mode of choice for nature photography is aperture priority mode. It allows you to control the light that's coming into your camera, so you can get the desired depth of field that you want, while not having to necessarily worry about your ISO, because that'll be set to auto, so the camera can kind of determine how much what numbers your ISO needs to be at. And I like it because you just don't have the time to be in manual mode trying to photograph animals that are moving that fast or there and then going. By the time you're looking down at your camera, they're gone, or excuse me, the lighting is changing. So I use aperture priority mode with auto ISO, and I set a minimum shutter speed to something that I desire that's high, so that way I don't have to worry about the shutter speed either. And I can just shoot and enjoy myself, and focus on getting close to my subjects, versus have my nose in my settings the whole time. Another setting that I use is shutter priority mode, and again, you have control over the shutter speed, but the camera chooses the aperture, or how much light, or controlling the light that's coming into your camera with shutter priority mode. I've used that for hummingbirds and other fast moving subjects. I try to use it in when I have optimum lighting, because again, the camera's choosing your aperture, so that may be kind of problematic. Um, Autofocus is your friend. It can be your enemy sometimes too, depending on what you got going on in the background and how old your camera is. But definitely, autofocus is your friend. And when you're doing nature photography, I would probably say just learn basic composition, rule of thirds. I teach people that, and I ask people that um, um, in my classes. I teach that, but I also tell people learn it and then toss it out. as an artist and a photographer, if you have a vision for what you want your shots to be, then go for it and have fun. Next slide. So, some other general tips for nature photography that I will point out to you briefly is just know your audience, know your subject. You know, I love photographing birds, but I also love photographing everything else as well. So if I got a hankering to photograph foxes, I need to know what time do foxes get up, what time they go to sleep, what they eat, when are they active, where they live, and what habitat they enjoy, and what some of their habits are, and vocalizations, which that could be for birds or any other type of animal. And I'll give you a quick example. I'm just by I was in the mood for photographing dragonflies, so I saw a dragonfly on a reed. I got close, it flew away. I stayed where I was, and it flew away, and boomeranged back to the same reed it was on. So I kind of noticed that dragonflies have that type of habit. They'll fly away when you disturb them and fly right back to where they were. So when it came back, I had the camera ready to get the shot that I wanted. And I noticed that about kingfishers do the same thing, even though they're very, very annoying. But kingfishers, they hard to photograph, but if you watch them, they like a certain perch, they'll zip away and come back to it. So just kind of observing your subjects and knowing their habits helps you to get shots as well. But these are just some of the things that I recommend that you try to do when you're getting into photography and trying to learn the subjects that you want to photograph. Next. So I think that's it. I do have some photos past this if people want to see some more of my work, but if not, Dara, we can just go into discussion if you want in the interest of time.
I'm totally here. All right. All right, David, thank you so much. Man, and what perfect timing, because I'm gonna be honest, I have an assistant here. Thank you, Ade. I had to run and get my camera because I'm so excited to talk to you and ask you questions.
Okay,
I don't even
sure.
need to look at the audience chat and look for questions. I have all the questions, dag nabbit. Because
Okay.
yeah, this is so great. Thank you so also congratulations on everything. Congratulations on one. I happen to just know this. You're getting married on Friday. When we talked about this, I was like, hey, I was like, I don't know. Well, yeah, I can do it. I'm just getting married on Friday and stuff, so no big deal. So you're a busy man. You're a man with plans. You're a man. I'm and the being the first man for the EP. So I had to write that down. Like what? Like first Black man with own exhibit. Hashtag goals. So solid. Well, anyway, so yes, everybody, and thank you all for watching. I see that engagement. Thank you. We're really please send in your questions. I'm gonna start reading them. I'm
Okay.
gonna start asking David them. So yeah, let's hop right in. Let's hop right into it. So first off, I want to address this question that someone asked that Tamika asked. Recommendation for a good camera, like good starter camera.
Okay. So that's this is what I tell people to do. It really depends on what you want to get into with your in terms of photography, be it nature, be it portraiture or whatever. I think that kind of plays a part in what camera you choose. Um, I think right now there's so many options. I mean, Canon comes out with 5,000 mirrorless cameras a week, and it's always something different with different features that one of them doesn't have, that the other does. So I would probably say I would do one of two things. I would Google best entry level DSLR or mirrorless camera if you got the money for it. Best DSLR mirrorless camera for beginners, or not that I'm plugging this company, but I buy a lot of stuff from them. If you go on B&H Photo Video, their website, go to their chat and actually speak to a representative and say, this is my budget. I'm a beginner photographer. I want to do nature photography. What camera do you recommend to start out with? And they'll have one of their experts hop on and you can chat with them and tell them your price range, what you're thinking about doing. And they give you some recommendations that way. But there's a ton of entry level DSLRs like Canon T7i, T6i, T8i, Canon 90D is a great camera body. I think 90D. I think there might be 80D as well. But though, I mean, you can. I don't think you really can go wrong. I think it's just get something that you can afford and start shooting and practicing. I think that's the best advice I can give you.
I'm laughing because it's like you're like, oh yeah, starter Canon T7i, and I'm like, man, I'm looking down at my T3i. Like I wasn't gonna hold it up like, look at this, I'm in the club. But no, okay, keep that down. Alrighty then. Okay, so well, did you mention what camera make model that you have?
Okay, so yeah, before I went and grabbed it, so I have a this is a Canon 7D Mark II. It's still an old guy, my workhorse, but I'm trying to get a mirrorless camera hopefully by the end of the year. We'll see what happens with the budgets and whatnot. But Canon 7D Mark II, I got this specifically because when I started with nature photography, I Googled, I said, what's the best DSLR for nature photography? Of course, they start with the highest. I said, let me slide down a little bit to where the budget's at. And I saw that this one was a crop sensor. It's not full frame, but crop sensor. And I chose it because it had some nice focus capabilities and fast shutter speed, which is what I was aiming for capturing birds in flight and other fast moving animals. And just for those who may be curious, this is a Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter lens. I cannot afford any Canon lenses right now, but so I went with Sigma and got this 150 to 600. It's my workhorse. It's my baby. I love it. Like I rarely take this off. That's pretty much what I shoot with. I take that back. I do have two Canon lenses. I have a 100 millimeter macro lens that surprisingly wasn't that expensive, being a Canon L lens, and I have a 70 to 200 that was my first zoom lens that I started out with, and I bought that from a friend, so I didn't even buy that from Canon itself. So, I found ways to save money on equipment when I can.
All right, I have another equipment question for you, just because,
Sure.
like I understood all of that. I swear I did.
Mm-hmm.
I know the language, but you use language like crop sensor versus full
Mm-hmm.
frame. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even realize that about my camera. I lucked out. Say what you will about the T3i, but that's a full frame,
Yeah.
and I love that. But also,
Yeah.
like when you said what? So what is that? What is the difference between that, and also why would it matter? Why does it matter to you? I thought full frame was better personally, so I'm very curious about that.
So crop sensor works. So basically, and I'm not gonna say I know 100% about the advantages or disadvantages of full versus crop, but crop sensor cameras tend to be a little bit cheaper, and they give you the what is it called? I'll just say additional magnification. So, for example, on this camera, because it is a crop sensor, not a full frame, it adds an additional 1.6, for lack of a better term, extension of whatever the focal length is on this lens. So, let's say I got 150 on the wide end, multiply that times 1.6. That gives me additional reach on the wide end. When I go at 600, multiply that times 1.6. I get additional reach on the long end of the focal length too. So crop sensors, a lot of people have used them for wildlife photography because if you don't have that expensive lens, a crop sensor will give you some extra reach without having to spend extra money for that additional lens to get that extra reach. So whereas with full frame cameras, whatever lens you put on there, if it's a 150 to 600, you get 150 to 600. That's what it is. There's no additional reach that you'll get with a full frame camera unless you have the money for a mirrorless camera, and they can do that in body itself. But so you can crop the sensor inside, so to speak, inside of a mirrorless camera, and switch between full frame and crop sensor or whatever that way. But yeah, that's essentially, to me, as I understood, it's like full frame gives you the full, I guess the full sensor versus crop sensor, because it's kind of cropping inside of the lens. It's giving you that extra reach. That's how I kind of understand it, if that makes sense. But for all intents and purposes, crop sensor, you'll get, depending on the camera, 1.4, 1.6 additional magnification on your lenses, whereas full frame, whatever your focal length is, that's what it is. That's how I kind of understand it.
Just that was very clear, and like I've read about that, but like it didn't make sense. So now I've been going on my friend for like, oh, full sensor. No, it turns out like for my purposes, I
Mm-hmm.
never realized that. Okay, solid, solid. All right, well, let me see. So please, we have a audience question. Nicole Jackson. Hey Nicole, how's it going? Nicole Jackson asks, can you share the importance of storage for photography? What are
Mm.
basic options to have for beginners?
Okay, so storage options for photography. So I'll tell you what I do. Um, I have some external hard drives that I bought, and the cool thing about it now is that when I started doing videography years ago, a 50 gigabyte external hard drive was like $100. It was crazy expensive. But now you can get a terabyte for like $90, which is like insane amount of space. So what I do is a couple things. I'll buy an external hard drive. You can get insane like 8 terabytes for like a couple $100. It's insane, and I'll back up my photos that way. So I have a kind of solid state hard drive that I can go to and access my photos. That if something happens, I can take them with me and have them. Um, and I also do cloud-based storage as well. So that's something where, excuse me, you can store your photos in the cloud. So like if your house burned down and your internal drives are in there, you still can access the cloud and still have access to your photos. So that's another option that you could do. Um, then I would say, just in terms of just space, like if you are, so I shoot all of my photographs in RAW. Like I don't do JPEG too much. I do RAW, but RAW takes up a lot of space. So depending on, if you're planning on printing your photographs or blowing them up and stuff like that, if you shoot in JPEG most of the time, that'll save space on external hard drives on the cloud. If you're shooting RAW, then you're going to need it. So if you're shooting RAW and you're keeping those RAW files just for archiving and stuff like that, then I would recommend getting like a couple terabytes, was much as many terabytes as you can afford, and just back stuff up that way. In terms of organization, like I'm good and bad at that. So like I'll when I started, I had all the species in the folders, whatever it was, reptiles, all that stuff. And then I got lazy, so then I just started throwing them in there. So it just depends on, how much you want to keep up with it. But in terms of storage, generally, just look at how you're saving your files, either JPEG or RAW. If you want to do a cloud solution, that's good. And then if you want to do solid state like external drives, I think those are good options too. And they're really affordable now at this point. And I think some people use things like Google Drive or Google Photos or Amazon Photos to store or archive photos as well. So I think those are all good options for that.
Speaking of how you store your photos, how do you store your photos? Do you mean Lightroom? Are you all in Apple Photos? Are you doing what?
Yeah. So I, again, I have a photography mentor that's pushing me to go to Photoshop and that whole Adobe suite thing. I just don't want to pay that monthly thing, or give me my program and let me update it when you come out with new stuff. I don't want to have to keep paying for it over and over again. So I edit all of my photos in Apple Photos, and I have a couple like plugins for like raw photo editing and stuff like that I use, and I just keep it simple. Like the only thing I'm probably may potentially get into Photoshop or Lightroom for is like I want to do more macro photography of like insects and things like that. And people do a lot of that focus stacking, which I do not know how to do. So I may have to learn. I might have to learn that. Um, but yeah, I just use anything you see on Instagram or on my photography website. It's all done in Apple Photos, and I just kind of, and I also really, just from an editing standpoint, like I only want to manipulate the photos, but so much. I just want like the only thing I really like to do is really pull out the colors that we can't see with our naked eye a lot of times, especially for very common birds. Like I didn't know how dope the plumage on grackles were, or starlings, or even just normal sparrows that just hanging around. Like you get, or mourning doves, for example. You get them in the computer and some good light, and you start kind of messing around with saturation and highlights and all that stuff. Them animals got some dope colors on them. It's just that we don't really pay them that mind because that's the dove, or the city sparrow I see all the time. But they got some colors in there that I like to pull out on when I edit. But other than that, I don't put the bird in a sparrow in Africa when I took it in Philly. I don't do all that crazy stuff with with Photoshop or whatever.
Did you know that the blue jay isn't actually blue? I learned this yesterday.
I did
It's
not. What color is it?
it's gray, I believe, just like, but the way the light shines on it, it's
Hmm.
just so. I was like, wait a minute, what? But the name,
That's that's amazing because those are one of those birds where it's beautiful, but it has a horrible sounding call. It's like, because I have them in the backyard, they'll come sit outside my window and squawk and screech early in the morning. It drives me nuts, but they're so pretty. I kind of, I can't be that mad at them.
so okay, so I'm looking at, and again, please, if you have a question, because these are just, I'm just curious. I want to start asking a little bit more advanced questions in case there's maybe like the intermediate to the, getting there, people. Because I remember when so this is my lens that I had. This is like my first telephoto lens, and
Hmm.
that's 70 to 300. I've since like upgraded and stuff, but I, but like when I look back at it and I look at some of these photos, the quality is better than what I currently shoot.
Hmm.
Say that. And I currently have L series lenses. Like I'm talking about like the arm workouts, like what you just
Yeah.
had. Yeah, like that's a workout. Um, so how can someone really determine when or what is really good to buy? Because I've wasted money on really cruddy lenses. But it's funny you say Sigma. I the cruddy lens is the Canon lens. I do not like the 200 to like the 400 one. No, I don't like that. But the Sigma 150 to 500 with like a
Hmm.
1.5 like magnifier, that's
Hmm.
money. And
Yeah.
and also it wasn't money. It was so much cheaper. I found it at a
Yeah.
Goodwill, and
Hmm.
and it was just like yay me. So I don't. So like yeah, what are resources and like how do you help people like struggling photographers like myself who aren't professionals like you who aren't getting paid gigs but also
Hmm.
aren't new to this?
So you mean so in terms of like choosing your equipment or choosing your lenses type of thing? Um, I think I would say it's just research because I actually learned a lot about lenses when I was doing videography because I was shooting a lot of my videos with DSLRs because they were cheaper than video cameras. And so I kind of learned about what lenses were sharper, that had a better depth of field, and had um, the better f-stop ranges and things like that. Um, I would say just research. Like, so if you have a lens that you're looking at, so when I was looking at the zoom lenses to get, um, I read a ton of reviews on. So Tamron has the 150 to 600, and then Sigma had a 160 to 600. And I would look at reviews on camera websites like F Stoppers or DP Review or and websites like that, and look at their comparisons in terms of sharpness or speed or focusing and things like that, or even just um, uh, toughness in terms of the elements. If this gets wet, is it going to fall apart? Looking at that weatherproofing and stuff like that. And I kind of just did that because that's like I go to the professionals in terms of like, you know, this is a great wildlife photography lens. This one and this one because of that, but you lose something because this one costs this much. So I would probably say just this researching it and like looking at what type of lens you want and then seeing what's out there and who's making it and then look at reviews for it. I think that's the easiest way to do it because I think I went with Sigma over Tamron because there was something about the sharpness or clarity that was in the Sigma lenses versus the Tamron that I think they were similarly priced or whatever, but Sigma just spoke to me, and I just went with that route, and I haven't been disappointed at all.
I agree. That's something I wish I knew because my second telephoto lens was a Tamron lens,
Mm-hmm.
and that's old. So no shade to Tamron because I also hear that sometimes certain lenses are for certain brands are better because the
Yeah,
Sigma I I have great things to say about Sigma. So
yeah.
there were some questions in the chat that I missed, and I apologize. Um, so first off, wait, hold on. What is the photo that you are the most proud of?
Oh wow. Actually, it's not a bird, but it's that wolf there in the background. Um, I so I would probably say each year that I've been doing nature photography, I have like a goal or a target for that year. And back in I think it was 2018, I was like, man, I'm gonna get a photograph of a wolf. And I was like, well, how do I get that? Do I gotta go all the way to Yellowstone and risk my life to get a photo of a wolf? So it was funny. My self-defense class teacher knows a guy that worked at a wolf conservation organization up in New Salem, New York, where they breed wolves and reintroduce them into the wild to help with the populations in Yellowstone and other areas across the country that have wolves or whatever. So me and my best friend from high school, we drove up there. It was like 6 hours from Delaware. Drove up there, and they had these nice areas where the wolves had nice habitats. It wasn't like at certain zoos where they be in like a fenced in thing all cold and shriveled up or whatever. These are very thriving habitats for these wolves. And so they had photography tours that you could do where you could get on a tower, or they had like kind of the fence where you could stick your lens through the hole in the fence and take photographs without having the fence in your way and stuff like that. So I knew in my mind I wanted to get a close up face shot of a wolf that I can hang in the house and just wow people. Because how did you get that? And they'll think I went on some epic tour of Yellowstone where actually I went to somewhere and sat on the tower and took the photo from safety. But but yeah, that's my one of my shots I'm most proud of because and again it's like, I'm a black guy from BC, where you get a wolf shot from. so um, so that's one of my proudest shots, I would say.
Hey, that's where it's at. So Katrina May has to know, when do you offer classes, and is trying to follow up after this.
Okay, so in terms of like, the in classroom classes that I do, so they usually are in um early spring and then in the fall. So I just finished a photography class at the Mount Cuba Center in Hockessin, Delaware. Um 2 weeks ago, I think, well, might have been last week. So usually April and May is just when I do the photography classes there, and then I do more in like September, October in the fall. But I'm starting to because a lot of people have been asking me, well, I live in California. How can I, I'm sure they're not going to travel across the country just for me. Um, so they asked about like online offering. So I'm looking into, I mean, I could easily just set up a Zoom call or whatever and just put it out there and say, hey, I'm doing a online basic nature photography course and have people sign up that way. That's something I'm looking into. I'll definitely look into it more because I think it'll be fun for me and also help a lot of people because again, most of the people that take my classes are um, either people who just got DSLR and don't feel like reading the manual, or doing looking at videos themselves, or they're older people who have had cameras for years and want to start using it. And my goal is just to kind of demystify these settings and terms that everybody talks about that people try to make seem so complicated, and it's not really. And so that's kind of my goal with the classes. So just stay tuned. If you follow me on Instagram, anything like that, or Facebook, just DM me, and I'll keep in contact with you as things progress in terms of like online photography classes. But also, if you are interested and you're not in the tri-state area, like, DMV or Philly, New Jersey, whatever, um, I'll let you know when those classes are too, for if you want to come to the garden and take the classes as well. And it's really nice because we do the classroom learning, and then we go outside into the garden and practice taking the photographs and practicing composition and aperture and all that cool stuff. So yeah, just hit me up or DM me, and we can keep in contact that way.
All right. And everybody, I know we started a little bit late, so thank you all for sticking around. Really appreciate it. Before I get on to the last question, I want to seriously thank this is the first day, just reiterate, this is the first day of Black Birders Week. Our theme is Flying Full Circle. And we are highlighting all the different identities and birding and all the ways that we we identify as a birder. So today we are highlighting and amplifying David, who really taught me so much. Thank you so much. I swear I did not know that about crop sensors, and like I'm really rethinking some of my purchase choices. So I hope this conversation, this presentation, this conversation was very helpful to you all, and I thank you for joining. And Zach asked, Zach, I don't know if I don't think it's been mentioned. I know the favorite thing you photograph, but what is your favorite bird or animal and like to photograph?
My favorite bird. Oh, that's a tough one. I would say my favorite bird is, I want to say, a bald eagle. Because anytime I see one, it's like I saw it for the first time. Like, I'm, oh, a bald eagle is, oh, it's so cool. And um, just just the way they look, the austereness, the size of these birds, and um, I don't know, just growing up, I knew that I had a quarter because the eagle was on it, so I knew I had the right money when I was going to the arcade. That's kind of weird, um, but yeah, bald eagles. I think I would say that's my favorite bird. And like as I've been kayaking more, I've been able to get even closer to see how, just the detail, the size of the talons and the claws, and the just the wingspread of these wingspan of these birds is amazing. So I would say the bald eagle would be my favorite bird.
I would. It's funny you say that because I was like, man, eagles are jerks. But also at the same time you say that, I saw an eagle yesterday, and sure enough, I almost made mom crash because she was driving. I was like, mom, because it was an eagle. It was first I saw the nest. I was like, oh wow,
Hmm.
there's a nest, and right
Yeah,
behind. Me. So I
yeah,
wish I had my camera then. So
yeah.
maybe I can go back. But anyway, thank you so much, David, for being here today. Thank you for conversing with us. Thank you for opening up Black Birders Week with just a profile on you. Everybody, please tune in for the rest of the week. If you have any questions, go to www.blackafnstem.com. We are black and fun, and we are here to bird. All right.
Thank you.